It's Thursday, April 12. This is the news on PBCJ. I am Simone Absalom. The government is to speed up its public sector rationalization program. That from freshly minted Finance and Public Service Minister Dr. Nigel Clark. He says the public sector must be condensed to achieve efficiency. Currently, there are 190 public bodies in the island, and the minister says this presents challenges.
Let us be honest with ourselves. The sheer number, 190, compromises the ability for effective parliamentary oversight, reflection, and review that are required for good governance. Furthermore, to the extent that with thought and creativity we could do with fewer public bodies, it means that we are absorbing resources in time. Nobody thinks about the time dimension. And money that could be deployed elsewhere, making our economy more vibrant and more efficient. Just for sake of comparison, Singapore, which has an economy that's 20 times the size of our own, 20 times. They have 1/3 the number of public bodies that we do. Approximately 1/3. They have 64 statutory boards and public bodies.
To precipitate the rationalization, Dr. Clark says an extensive review is going to be done over the next 4 to 6 weeks.
In that time, we'll conclude the necessary consultations with our union partners, with ministries, with stakeholders, towards the establishment of an accelerated timetable. This timetable will consider all of the opportunities that are present with respect to, one, divestment of public companies that have a commercial focus, but which are not necessary for government to carry out its key functions. Two, the merging of public sector entities where they perform similar key functions in order to achieve some effective delivery of service. And three, the reintegration of public bodies into their parent ministries, where they no longer require the status of a public entity in body corporate form to carry out their mandate. We intend to start consultations with our partners in the union movement immediately.
The minister was a keynote speaker at the 2018 Labour Market Forum held at the Terra Nova Hotel on Wednesday. The House of Representatives has approved a 60 days extension of the Zones of Special Operations, ZOZOs, in Mount Salem, St. James, and Denham Town, Kingston. In relation to Mount Salem, Prime Minister Andrew Holness told the lower house that there have been no reports of major crimes, no abuse by the security forces, and the residents continue to cooperate with the security forces. However, in Denham Town, Holness explained that achievements have been interrupted by gang activities.
Some achievements have, however, been interrupted, delayed by ad hoc periods of ruthlessness perpetrated by criminal gangs, particularly in the Denham Town space, who are awaiting any opportunity to continue the violence. This is an unacceptable reality, and persons continue to be directly and indirectly affected. There is recognition that the government's response requires a long-term intervention that must go beyond community improvement to actual violence interruption measures.
This is the third extension for Denham Town and fourth for Mount Salem. The St. James Zozo was first declared on September 1, 2017, while Denham Town Zozo took effect on October 17 last year. Opposition spokesman on national security Fitz Jackson argued that the government should not embrace what he described as a false sense of security.
With 24-hour police military presence, 7 days a week, quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, I don't expect any murders to be committed in those areas. So the truth of the matter, to announce that there is no murder in the zones of special operation or even in the area of this state of emergency is really not a news. That is expected with that level of security presence. But Mr. Speaker, we must not have any false sense of security. Since the beginning of this year, with the state of emergency in one entire parish since January 18th to now, and with state zones of special operations from last year, well, don't even go back to last year, just from the beginning of the year, the presence of these two military, high concentrated military police presence, up to Sunday, 385 murders have taken place. 323 shootings have taken place since the beginning of this year.
Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark has promised to table in the House of Representatives the government's changes to its policy in respect for motor vehicle assigned to ministers. He made the announcement on Wednesday during his first statement to the House since his appointment as Minister of Finance. The Holness administration has had to purchase 14 motor vehicles, as those which were assigned to ministers in the previous administration were bought by them, consistent with the policy which existed at the time. But Dr. Clark argued that arrangements such as these are placing a strain on the government purse.
The change that I'm referring to is with respect to the right that ministers have to purchase vehicles upon a change in government. That right, the right that existed before, that allowed 16 of you and many others before in previous administrations to purchase vehicles on demitting office, therefore depleting the fleet and putting the government of Jamaica in a position where there's a requirement to purchase new vehicles, even though the vehicles purchased by the outgoing administration may be 3 years old or 2 years old in some cases. That policy no longer exists.
The finance minister added that despite the lower amount spent, some costs which were not applicable under the previous administration were in effect when the present government had to purchase the new vehicles.
Additional relevant facts of which the Honourable House and the Jamaican public should be aware are that under the tax reforms implemented by the Simpson-Miller administration, after the purchase of motor vehicles by her government in 2012 and 2013, GCT of 16.5% became payable on government purchases in 2014. Special consumption tax of 20% became payable on government purchases in 2014. And a customer administration fee became payable on government imports in 2013.
The government has officially yanked the licenses issued to telecommunications company Symbiote Investments, which trades as Carousel. A letter to Symbiote, which was signed by Technology Minister Dr. Andrew Wheatley, made reference to a letter sent to Symbiote on November 17 last year, outlining that the Office of Utilities Regulation had recommended that its licenses be revoked on the basis that the company failed to provide information. Technology Ministry says this was a breach of the Telecommunications Act. It says Symbiote was given until December 1 to indicate why its licenses should not be revoked. According to the letter, Symbiote failed to give a reason. As a result, its 6 licenses have been revoked. Newly appointed Minister of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries, Audley Shaw, is committing to remove what he calls the impediments to the development of medical cannabis sector. The minister, who is on a drive to increase production on what he calls Idle Lands, says cannabis is among the plants to pursue. He says he has already met with the Cannabis Licensing Authority to explore and discuss issues primarily relating to the CLA's regulatory role in this regard, as well as activities in the wider marijuana and hemp industries. Mr. Shaw says he is also eyeing increased production and export of horticultural products like flowers. Minister Shaw was speaking Wednesday morning at the Everglow Fertilizer Seminar 2018 at the Caymanas Golf and Country Club. In regional news, we look to Trinidad and Tobago as a Planning and Development Minister and leader of government business, Camille Robinson-Regis, says sacked Sport Minister Darrell Smith should not resign from his position as MP for Diego Martin Central. Reportedly, there are allegations of misconduct surrounding Smith. On Monday, as part of a cabinet reshuffle, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley appointed himself Minister of Housing and Urban Development and named Smith as his junior minister. But Rowley on Tuesday advised President Paula May Weeks to revoke Smith's appointment in light of new information which came to his attention during a meeting between Rowley, Robinson-Regis, and Smith. A statement from the Office of the Prime Minister on Tuesday said that a committee has now been appointed to thoroughly review the circumstances surrounding the dismissal and $150,000 payout to Carrie Ann Moreau at the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs, where Smith was minister. But Robinson-Regis said the allegations surrounding Smith were just that, allegations. Hence, there was no need for his resignation. In sports, Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, Olivia Grange, has called for significant changes in the governance structure for sport. Grange made the call in her address at the Commonwealth Sport Ministers meeting in the Gold Coast, Australia, on the margins of the Commonwealth Games. It was delivered by Permanent Secretary in the Ministry, Denzel Thorpe. In the address, Grange argued that the governance structure has not kept pace with the dynamic growth and meteoric rise of sport and the increasing levels of participation in physical activities, both recreational and competitive, within the country. In addressing the issues with the governance structure, Grange said that her ministry is working with the government's public sector transformation team to conduct a comprehensive review that will effect a more modern system. And that's the news. Thanks so much for making it PBCJ. Remember, we are the People's Station.